So we're starting this Zoom virtual discussion with Craig Swaisgood, who I've worked with in the past, and we're going to dive into a little bit about what he does and how he got into sports. You guys have talked to Nate. Nate's been on is taking the lead on a lot of these videos. So if you don't know his background, he'll share it with you here in a second. But Craig, thanks for being with us. Just wanted to say thanks, and a beautiful day here in Houston, but wanted to give you a chance to say hi.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
You're in Houston, right?
Yeah, I am.
All right. We're laughing because Nate and I are in the same building, but Nate's in a conference room right over, and we didn't want to be in the same room and have echo situations. So, Nate, I'm guessing you're in Houston too?
Yep. 5 feet away from you. Really. Social distancing.
6 feet apart.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Well, yeah, we're going to bounce around on a few questions about technology, entrepreneurship, sports. We're going to avoid the whole COVID-19. I think it's obvious everyone's dealing with that. Otherwise, we would be in the same room with a camera on all of us. But Nate, you want to jump into the next question?
It's great. What's the background on how you became interested in starting with in your current role with the Astros?
Sure. So I think it really it starts just like it starts for I played baseball growing up. I started playing t-ball when I was 3 or 4 years old, and so throughout the course of my life, I've just always loved the game. And the first 10, 15 years of my career, I actually worked in the public and private sector doing a variety of things around data analytics, strategic planning, project management, program management, a lot of profit and loss stuff. But kind of always just followed baseball. My wife even made a joke in the middle of our wedding about how maybe I watch baseball a little bit too much. So in about 2016, the beginning of 2017, my role in Washington, D.C. fundamentally changed. And so my wife and I, who had lived there for about 8.5, 9 years, decided that it was probably a good opportunity just to see if there's anything else out there. We didn't know that we wanted to be in DC for the rest of our lives, and we're on the cusp of a decade. It certainly could have become that. And so we started looking around the country, and as I was thinking about the job search, I decided to throw baseball out there. And so had followed the Houston Astros, knew that they were a team on the rise, saw that there was a position that did kind of speak to a lot of the skills that I developed in the private sector, and then also a little bit in the public sector. Applied. Got the job, sounded like a good job. It was the first one with the Astros. So Senior Director of Operations and Insights, primarily with the marketing team. Got it. Asked my wife if she wanted to move to Houston, Texas. We didn't know much about Houston or Texas. We decided that it was going to be a fun adventure. And it was nice because it was baseball, which I've always loved, but it combined a lot of the professional experience that I developed over the last 10 to 15 years.
Nice. It was kind of the same boat for me. Houston was never on my radar. And I was basically back home, happy, and saw the opportunity to join Ticket Ops team here when they were looking to move towards TDC. And you start to RBI analytics for the retail concessions, all that stuff. So it was just wanted to take advantage of that opportunity and make a move, see what happens.
Yeah, and a lot of the skills are transferable, right? It's if you can solve a problem, if you can communicate, if you can think about technology a little bit differently, it doesn't matter whether it's the private sector, the public sector, sports, or anything else. Those are skills that are going to matter when businesses trying to make smarter decisions.
Yeah, I'll jump in too. Very similar to you guys, except with the exception of I was born and raised here, but so. Houston obviously was always on my radar, but sports was not. It wasn't one of those things where I grew up and, studied and realized that, hey, this is the industry I wanted to be in. Kind of fell into it through working with different clients. And once, like Craig mentioned, once you realize, hey, I could, do what I love, do what I want to do for a living and combine something that I'm really passionate about. I have a natural organic history with it. It was a win-win. So yeah, I agree. One of the things I always say about my time in sports is just the business that I learned in sports has been the most beneficial. Because that, of course, you want to always have something that's applicable to, any innovative industry. So yeah, very similar stories.
So I guess to kind of piggyback where we started, you mentioned like a lot of marketing, analytics, ticket sales information. We started to work together and look at like Power BI and see what information we can gather from CRM or the ticketing platform. Kind of, if you could go into like a little detail as far as like what you use that for the strategy and insights that the Astros are looking for.
Sure. So I think over the last few years, baseball and a lot of sports have started to take data on the business side a lot more seriously.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to connect sometimes as many as 20 to 25 different softwares for a variety of reasons to one data source. And as you know, being able to put everything on the cloud and kind of have that one picture of how your business is doing, who your customers are, how they're engaging has been critical. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last few years, finding a way to connect all of that and tell the whole story. I will say one of the biggest challenges, and I don't think that this is unique to the Astros, but it's certainly true of a lot of sports, baseball especially, is that sometimes we end up with so much data that people lose focus of the important data, and they just get so excited to have hundreds of billions of data points, which with a 162 game season and all of the different things that go into that, it's a lot of data. They start to lose focus and they start to just key in on the access to data as opposed to the application of data. And so it's important that we not only have all of the access, but we figure out what to do with it. We got a really smart analytics team that kind of leads the way on a lot of that, but it's tough and it's a lot. And understanding what makes sense and what provides value, not an easy thing. And so you do need a lot of different people sitting at the table making those decisions.
Yeah. I think, I guess one of the trends I've seen is kind of like being able to personalize some of that information and figure out like who exactly is coming to the ballpark. Like as Craig and his family are coming, what information do we need to communicate or want to communicate to them? That's important. And be able to leverage that.
Hey, Craig, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, and it's also an interesting thing. My last job, I worked a lot on privacy, IT privacy, cybersecurity. And so it's balancing that, right? Like we've got a lot of people's data, but we certainly don't want to use it just because we have it. And certain social media platforms have different rules around how you can use data, whether it needs to be anonymized. And I get all of that. And so it's balancing, providing that customized experience to people while also being good stewards of their data, which, you know, it's a line that if you're not careful, you can cross it. And certainly you don't want to do that.
Right.
That's right in line, along the lines of the question I actually had for you was knowing, and I should probably should have said this when we started, but I actually worked with Craig. I had the honor to work with him. Extremely bright young man, I will say. Definitely one of the smarter guys in the buildings for sure. But I will say, or one of the things I wanted to ask you, because when we worked together, I knew one of the things you were really good at was, crafting the data in a form where, you were giving it you were forming it in a way to where it was easily digestible, depending on who you were talking to. You almost like customized it based on who was going to receive the report. Can you talk a little bit about that and how, maybe some of the things that people do to, easily make it, too, like overpopulated with information, or some of the things that you recommend that when you get, you talked about 20 different, software and data points, how do you streamline it and make it a lot more digestible? What are some of the tips, I guess, in a basic term that you would give?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for your kind words also. It's the same thing as communication at the end of the day. You hear a lot of people talk about the democratization of data and how everybody should have access to data. And I think that that's right in general, but I think that there's a huge caveat to that, which is people should have access to the data that helps them and that they can understand, because there's nothing worse than having data that you can't understand. And so to your point, I can go and throw out a bunch of pretty charts and graphs and tell you all of my findings and then ask you why you don't understand. But there really is a huge need for people to feel like that's their data. And so it comes down to fundamental communication. If I'm talking over your head, then a lot of people don't want to admit when they don't understand the data, when they don't understand the message. And so they're not going to stop you and ask. And so you have to create certain touch points to ensure that the data is not just a bunch of numbers, graphs, and charts, but it's something that people are using day in and day out, and they're internalizing to make better and smarter decisions. It's tough because everybody's different, and talking to a creative team like you led versus talking to an analytics team or a revenue team like ticket sales or sponsorship, you have to have a different approach because people have different needs and different ways to improve. And if you don't give a lot of thought into how you're going to customize that conversation with each different group, you're going to fail. And that to me is as important as having the data, is understanding how you can actually drive it and make it important to whoever needs to use it to become better or to engage fans or to make more money. So you have to spend a lot of time to think about how it's being received and who you're giving it to.
That's almost a standard operating procedure in your role. Is that sound fair to say?
It is, yeah. I mean, if I don't connect it for people, then I can tell 4 different people what the data says, and they're going to have 4 different conclusions on how to act. And so that's okay in the beginning, but eventually you want everybody working off the same sheet of music. And so you need to make sure that they understand where everybody's going and how best to achieve whatever a leader like you or anybody else in the role of leading a team, how they can use that to make smarter decisions.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've taken away from working with you and the team is just, data is really just another form of communication and how you just like you said, anything else, any type of other information that you communicate, if you hone that in the right way and understand who you're talking to, it's a lot more impactful. And then I can take that and obviously use that for whatever agenda or type of campaign that we're using it for. No, I agree. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. So the one other thing that I might add to that is data in its most fundamental definition is just information. A lot of people, especially in sports, think that all of data is quantitative data. Well, data is just information. So sometimes it's quantitative, sometimes it's qualitative. And understanding the difference and understanding how those complement each other allow a group like a creative team to be much better, because numbers don't tell you how beautiful a design is. It doesn't tell you how impactful a campaign will be. Numbers tell the story, but they're only part of the story, and that qualitative data matters a lot.
Well, something not to go off too far, but a term that I learned while working with you was the false positive. Can you explain that a little bit, and then quickly, is that something that always happens in data sets, or is that just kind of like something that you need to look out for?
Yeah, I think data without explanation will give you all types of false information, and you'll come to all types of wrong conclusions. The best example really is your world, which is the creative world. I tell people, I joke, I think that the Astros have one of, if not the best photographers, one of the best photographers in any sport. And I joke with him that I'm terrible at taking a photograph. However, if I take a photograph of a Game 7 walk-off and our photographer takes one of a very special moment between Altuve and Bregman, I'm going to get more likes on social media than him, even though his is artistic and his is beautiful and it shows just how nuanced the game can be, because I captured a moment, but he captured art. And so when you look at data, somebody might conclude that my photo was better, that post was better. That's not true. And so I think that there's always a story behind the data, especially in the creative world, especially in the marketing world, to say, you're not more of a genius because you sold more tickets after you won the World Series. You're more of a genius because you did genius things. And that, I think, is where you do get some of those false positives. You can start to drink your own Kool-Aid. And sometimes that's legit, and sometimes you're just drinking Kool-Aid, and you better watch out for the results.
Yeah. No, I think I learned the most when we were in last place. You learn what really matters versus like you mentioned in sports, it's so easy to when the team's winning, no one asks questions. But all right, where are we? What's next here?
Now I was going to pivot to more of like the startup founder kind of new solutions that get presented. So like kind of as companies pitch products that are like fan engagement related or venue optimization related, like how do you kind of vet what's useful or what's helpful for you specifically, but also like the actual organization, and be able to like communicate that towards other departments?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that there's two questions there. How do you vet it? It's really hard because so many people they gravitate towards sports because sports is sexy, sports is exciting. It's something that many of us did when we were young. There are billions of people either participating in sports or watching somebody participate in sports every year. Fewer in 2020, obviously, but everybody likes it. And so people that work at a sports team get bombarded with emails. And so it's very difficult to break through. What I would say is if you think that you should just play the kind of long game with a template, and you should just send me a bunch of templates of why insert team here is going to benefit from a fan engagement tool, I'm probably not going to be that excited.
Yep.
You need to develop some type of real relationship. You need to show me how it's actually going to benefit, because it is just so hard to even get your email, your phone call to the top of the pile. And even if you get an email back or a phone call back, a lot of the times we're just being nice because you didn't really put together a compelling argument for the Houston Astros. You're just saying that you're good for sports.
Yeah.
The second part there is, I think that startups and entrepreneurs have a huge role to play. And this is probably true of all sports, but I'll keep it to baseball, because there's more than 150-year history in baseball, and there's not only a ton of rules and a ton of ways of doing things. We're a sport that has a ton of unwritten rules. So there's not even a book you can read on these unwritten rules. And you got a lot of people who think that loving baseball means that you need to be a purist and you need to not let it change and just kind of do what's always been done. That's true in a lot of industries, but in baseball especially, I think we need to get out of our own way, and we need to understand that you can both love baseball and think that it needs to change for the better. And that's where I think technology plays a huge role. And because you have so many people in sports that are kind of purists, not excited to change, entrepreneurs and startups have to come in and kind of force the issue. And when that happens, you can see significant improvement on how your team performs, how your fans are engaged, how you make smarter decisions with data, really everything.
I think something that I saw, and I think we probably saw, is like getting other people that don't see the same vision. So like if there's a product or service out there that you see could be helpful, getting other people kind of aligned with that, it's kind of difficult. It's a task to kind of undertake and convince and make the business case that this is something we should pursue.
Yeah, because sports thinks that they should just get everything for free because we are so sexy, and that's really difficult to create a business model for a startup.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see that parallel, like on the government side, like cities, like if you want to work with the city, like what are you giving us to make that happen?
Yep.
That's been cool. Okay. And then I guess like as you're seeing these different startups or technologies come about, like what ones are you like most curious about that kind of pique your interest?
It's a great question. I don't know that I have a specific technology in mind, but I think especially with COVID-19, the idea that the digital world and the in-person world needs to be seamless, I think is showing up as much today as it's ever shown up. So my comment about how sometimes baseball's stuck in the past or is slow to change, this is forcing people. This is showing people that you have to create a digital experience. And if you're trying to learn on the fly, you're going to have a lot more hiccups than if you just do it when it makes the most sense. And so what I'm really excited about is finding a way to bring that experience into the home, because it's going to be a while before everybody is comfortable going back into a stadium. And I think that's it shows itself out in esports, where I never knew a lot about esports until recently. And when I heard that esports can sell out the Staples Center in minutes, I was like, no way. Like, how would you even do that? What's the point? I was a skeptic like so many people. And then I actually saw the event and I was like, oh my God, you can actually do a cooler fan experience when you don't have to worry about players seeing the ball or, refs having to make calls. So I think, not only because you can kind of have the social distancing, but the fact that they've already figured out how to create that digital experience in a live format and vice versa, puts them way ahead of a lot of sports that need to figure out that same thing.
Yeah, they can be super creative, like very quickly, and creating graphics or some attractive element that they can develop on the fly, like you said. And then I think another thing is like this: companies are looking for ways to activate and find like sponsorships, and that's kind of helping drive this the growth pretty quickly.
Well, given your guys' role, I'd be interested to hear from you guys what companies out there are doing that or some version of that really well.
The ones that I'm like kind of most familiar with are like Jordan did a Jumpman shoe release through Fortnite. So instead of getting their eyes on like everybody goes like Foot Locker, Foot Action, and like the traditional like sneakerhead, you have potentially like 20 million people that see your shoe in an instant. You can add those as skins for different players and kind of broadcast through that. And then also like Travis Knight did a concert, or he's doing a concert series, 5 different nights, and they're hosting it in Fortnite. So I think the first night they had 12 million people that viewed it.
Jesus.
Yeah. And that's an audience that's typically not gonna, probably won't be at his concert that he's targeting, and there's like a whole brand new audience on top of whatever he was bringing to the table initially.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's really cool stuff. That gets me excited.
Okay. And then you can do like tournaments, like MLB's doing like the show, player against player kind of thing. So you can find creative ways to kind of activate that way and still get players involved, get the fans involved in watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm with Nate. Like the companies that are doing that now, I think the virtual was already their platform, and so they're able to like basically reverse dunk. When everyone's just trying to get a normal one hand or a layup, on the virtual world. These guys, I mean, with Travis Scott having a virtual concert with Fortnite, brilliant. Like that could easily, why couldn't a Major League Sports team, play a whole virtual matchup? It could be, live, where you can walk around the actual stadium, or, you can dress however you want. You can dress your character up however you want. Whether it be live or something that's maybe, these 3 players battle these 3 players in a different world, or maybe it's actually, in the sport in itself, soccer or whatever. To me, that's been mind blowing, because now you're not only capturing your audience that you already had. Esports kind of has their demo, but you're also catching low hanging fruit of people who are looking for more engaging things, online, because ESPN is just running replays, don't get me wrong, the Michael Jordan stories and all that, we can watch those all day, but they're not that cultural, real-time, relevant sporting events. So for me, it's anyone that could tap in, kind of like what you were saying earlier, Craig, about getting into people's homes, who's doing that. And it's really, I think who's doing it really well is our esports companies and technologies. But I also think sports teams have a chance right now to pivot a little bit and realize that, if they were on the brink of like, hey, should we do a podcast, or should we start a show? Should we start our own channel? Like, now you have to. And then you have to also realize, like, what tools can I use to polish it? Whether it's a creative in-house team, or a company production team, or, an animation team, or, a streaming live service through Adobe. Like, there's so many different, even this interview here, Nate and I vetted a few different, services, and, to figure out which would be the best. So I think teams have been baptized into this field, but they should have already been in, to be honest, So hopefully we'll see who sticks with it. I think it'll be we'll see who comes out with, hey, we're this is our new technology or our new platform, and who just kind of, when traditional sports starts back up, throw it out. But the last thing I'll say is, I think sports teams should always be looking for the new technology and innovation to give them an advantage, just like you would on the field. You want that in business as well. So I think any team that's finding those, adopting them and rolling them out, and sometimes, they don't have to be, long plays. They could be, pilots. We can just betas. I think that really says a lot about an organization as well. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a really good point on hopefully teams don't go back after this, right? Like, I know that we're forced to play some old games, but there's a reason. I don't know if you guys remember ESPN Classic.
Yeah.
There's a reason that's not a channel anymore. Like, it just got old. Even classic games started to get a little bit old. And while you were talking, CDG, I was reminded of a comic thing that I saw. It's not really a strip, but it had a board meeting, and it had a bunch of people sitting around a table. And they said, one person asked something around, like, hey, should we have a digital strategy? And somebody else is like, yeah, we'll put that in the 5-year plan. And then all of a sudden, right outside of the conference room was this big wrecking ball, and it had the words COVID-19 on it. And it was like, well, guess what? It's not a 5-year plan. You're going to decide and figure it out right now. And I do think that it's pushed us into making decisions that maybe we pushed off a little bit. And hopefully, like you said, hopefully we don't go back, because we've learned a lot. I think a lot of teams and a lot of leagues have grown a lot. I just hope that they can maintain the momentum when we do get back to whatever sports looks like.
Yeah, I think you have to have it's a cliche term, but a diversified portfolio. And so many, organizations, specifically sports teams, have gone, hey, this has worked for us. Tickets sell, it's our bread and butter, traditional sponsorship sell. And it definitely has pushed everyone off the cliff. And I for me, it's been a real interesting time. That's, to me, is what I've noticed the most. Which, like, I'll give you another example. Why not pivot and change your whole message? Why not pivot and change your whole model? Like, why not offer this moving forward? Hey, not only could you have a season pass, but could you have a virtual pass? And I know some of these things exist in the MLB app, for example, but we don't push them enough. We don't. And I say we, the sports industry. It's more, again, going towards the things that we already can do. So anyway, this is a good conversation. We appreciate you letting us dive into your brain a little bit, man. I think what the way I would like to end this is just say, first of all, thanks, Craig, for your time, man. And we know in sports, Nate and I have worked in sports for years, so we know how busy your schedules are, whether you're remote or not, man. But also, I'd like to say, hey, let's leave the door open and have you back at some point, and I think that'd be interesting too, a post-COVID conversation or a follow-up and see, if there's a technology that you guys are using or adopting, by all means, man, share it with us. And for me, I know my career has changed with different software that has came into my world. It's like, okay, now this is a part of me and how I report. Now this is a part of me. So everywhere I go, to be honest, those companies go with me. Those our technologies. So, yeah, man, I'd love to follow back up with down the line with you and see what's up.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited.